It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Are you ready? Are you set? Got everything all ready to go? Let's do it. Let's do the Blazor Power Hour. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour. It's finally 2021, first show of the year. I put out on some of the earlier shows a GitHub page that I asked or just kind of left out there as a source for feedback on the show, a place to keep some show notes. And I said, if anybody submits an issue, I would try to take a look at it and see if it would make a good topic for a show. So over the holidays, somebody submitted Bernard Fua, I think is the last name, submitted an issue here, asked me to see if I could implement touch gestures in Blazor. He wanted to know if it was possible to do like a swipe left, up, right, down, that type of thing in Blazor WebAssembly, and if I could create a demo to show on the show. So I was a little bit skeptical at first. I wasn't sure what the state of touch was in Blazor. And let's here get the GitHub page up on the screen as well. I wasn't sure what the state of touch gestures were in Blazor. So I took a quick look at it yesterday and did some early experiments to see what the JavaScript side of this looked like, and tried to figure out what the Blazor part of this would look like. So I've got a demo to show you today, and we're going to build a swipe event handler for Blazor. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I'm going to use Rider today for my editor. I normally use Visual Studio, but it gave me some headaches last year, so I'm trying out some other editors this year. I still use Visual Studio. I'm testing Rider and Visual Studio Code, so you'll see me use all of these this year. So this is JetBrains Rider. And let's see. Let me make sure I can zoom really well here so you guys can see what I'm working with. So you can see I've got JetBrains Rider. I'm going to click on New Solution over here and get a new project going. So let's go ahead and start a brand new web application. We'll change this to Blazor Power Hour Swipe. We'll call it that. So that'll be our project name. It is going to be a project type of Blazor WebAssembly. So we're going to do this on WebAssembly. This would work on server side as well. I would say there might be some issues with latency on this, possibly. I haven't tested it, so I'll just put that out there, that this isn't something that I've heavily tested. I am simply going through the process of how you would accomplish this in Blazor. It doesn't mean that it's something that you should use in production or anything like that, just as a little bit of a reminder that this is not tested code. So this is for you guys to kind of take on your own and see how it works for you, and learn a little bit about how some of these event handlers work in Blazor. So I've got a brand new Blazor project. Let's just double check, make sure. Yep, we've got a Blazor project here. Again, this is Rider, so it might look a little bit different. And I know some of this is probably hard to see, so I will be zooming in. And if you have any questions about something that you can't see, let me know. Hey, Ancient Coder, welcome back. So I've got a basic Blazor WebAssembly project here. I'm going to go into Pages. We'll just hack away at the index file today. We're not going to open too much else. We're just going to be doing some simple component stuff, but we're going to be involving touch. So there's going to be some little learning opportunities here about how to interact with touch, how to use it in your browser so you don't have to get out your mobile device and hook up your app and all of that. I'm also trying to remember how to zoom. There we go. Just control in scroll will zoom this in for me. So we'll get the font nice and big so you can see it well on the stream. So the first thing that we need to do is we need something to interact with. So we'll create an element that we can swipe gesture to. And I'll get to the question here that's coming through, it looks like YouTube as well. And why Blazor? Why not React or Vue? The main reason to use Blazor, in my opinion, is because you want to use .NET. You want to use .NET, and you want to use C# code. You want to use your .NET libraries, and you don't want to have the headache of all of NPM, Webpack, and all that JavaScript ecosystem. Yeah, so as Ancient Coder says, why not Blazor? Same question applies the other way around, doesn't it? Why Blazor? Why not React or Vue? Why not Blazor? They're all very good. There's no wrong choice there, by the way. It's just a matter of preference. React and Vue are excellent. Vue and .NET together are excellent. So like an MVC, classic MVC application in Vue, also a great choice. All right, so I'm going to delete some of the boilerplate code out of this. So we just have our page directive up here at the top. And again, we need something that we can interact with. So I'm going to use a little bit of Bootstrap code just to get something up on the screen that we can touch. So we're going to use a card interface here. So we'll say div class equals card. And then the card requires some sort of width. Let's leave that off for now. Let's see if it spans out to 100% from the get-go. And I'm just going to paste a little bit of boilerplate in this here, so you don't have to watch me type this all out. And we'll format that up. So this is, again, this is all bootstrappy styles right here. So we've got a card CSS class on here. I've got an image that has just a placeholder image in it. And we've got a card body. We could set this to whatever we'd like. We can make a component out of it if we wanted to. But the main thing here is that we just want something that would represent the interface we'd want to touch and swipe on. So this is what it renders out like, and this is huge. It did span the full width of the screen. So let's kind of shrink that down a little bit. We'll give this an inline style just for now. And we'll say width. And let's make this, we'll go by the Bootstrap example. This is what they use on their pages, 18 rems. You could set that to pixels, percentages, whatever you'd like. Go ahead and rebuild that and give it a refresh. Now we have a little bit of a smaller card that we could see here. So when we're talking about swiping and touching on a web application, when I'm in Chrome, I don't get those touch events unless I'm on a mobile device. So the first thing I need to do is click Inspect here, and I'm going to go, you can use this little icon up here. It says Device Toolbar when you hover over it. So the Device Toolbar in the DevTools. I'm going to click on that. And then I want to select some sort of touch device. So an iPhone 10 is probably a good choice. And you can see the cursor change to kind of like a finger icon, a touch icon, instead of the mouse pointer. So this is doing touch events when I click on an element. So I've got that enabled by just opening up my DevTools and switching over to a mobile device on the browser. So just checking questions here again. We're still chatting about React and Vue. So more companies require that one can use Vue or React. Not many companies are looking to hire for Blazor right now. That will change over time. Blazor's a bit newer. Vue and React have been established for, I want to say 5 years now, something like that. Blazor has been in full production for about a year. And the 5.0 just shipped, the .NET 5 version just shipped in November, and that's really the key version that changes that ecosystem. So we'll see that change over time. It'll grow. There's job offerings out there now, just not as many. So we want to be able to touch this card, and there are built-in APIs for this. So this is something that was added in the latest version of Blazor in that .NET 5 release. I don't believe these were around in 3.1. A lot more client-side events got bubbled up in the latest version. So to bind to an event in Blazor, we use the @ directive, and then we can call out various events that happen on an HTML element. So I could say @ on click, and I could bind to a click event on an HTML element, and then I would give it some method. So let's go ahead and just do one of these, for example. So I need a code block here, and then we would need some sort of event handler to handle this click event. So I could say void handle click, and then we'll just set up some kind of feedback loop here. So let's go ahead and create a alert box up here. I'll just go with a paragraph tag, and we'll class this out with alert info, and this will just give us kind of an output. We could write this to console, however you'd like to do it. This is just going to give us something that we can display on the screen. So we'll write out a message up here in this paragraph tag. So let's set up a placeholder for message. Let's see. For now, we'll call this click to begin. And that'll give us a place to a little bit of an instruction and something that we can change. So on the click event, we will say message equals clicked. And this is the basics of just handling events in Blazor so far. So we've got a field. We're going to bind that up here. When we click on this event handler, we need to trigger that. So we'll say handle the click event. And we're not going to do anything with any specific event event arguments right now. We're just going to go ahead and handle the click event. And it's telling me I misspelled it. So good hint by Ryder there, letting me know I misspelled that event handler. So we've got that set up. So we'll have to recompile this again. I could set up a watch on this. I don't have that quite running here, but I could set it up so I don't have to keep rebuilding this manually. Being a little bit lazy this morning. So we'll refresh that page. And you can see my alert box says click here to begin. And if I click anywhere on my card, it says it's been clicked. So if I refresh, click to begin, and we've clicked. So we know we're handling that event now. So that's good. So let's get into touch. If we want to handle a touch event, it's similar. We say instead of saying on click, we can say on touch. Let's see if I've got that right. It is on touch or untouched. Or is it, sorry, there's a few of these. So let's look at this real quick. Let's go to the web and say HTML touch events. There's a whole list of these. Mozilla's got really great docs. This is a place that I go all the time. So if we look at touch event, we've got, let's see, changed touches, we've got target touches, and we've got touches. So there's a bunch of events here that we can use. And there's also a touch start. Let's see if I can find that one in here. There is a touch start and a touch changed, which I saw in there. But they give back a touch event. And the touch event has information in it about the XY coordinates of where that element was touched. Also, you can see we've got support in here. So browser compatibility, you're not going to be able to use this in Internet Explorer and Safari. Safari doesn't have the touch event. So, you know, Safari's the new IE, by the way, if you haven't figured that one out yet. So there's no touch event there, although it does say iOS Safari has it. So I guess there's no desktop touch for Apple anyway, so I guess that's kind of a non-issue. While Chrome on the Windows desktop, for example, I have a Surface tablet in front of me that you cannot see, would have touch. So we've got the touch events. One of those events is on touch start. There's a touch start, a touch end, a touch move, all of those things. And we want to handle touch start. And with those event args that we get back, those are actually mirrored in Blazor as well. So if we were to handle a touch start event, what I could do is come in here and say handle touch start. I'm going to make sure I change my event handler up here. And I am passing in a touch event args. I'm going to call it T. And in T, I can say T dot, and you can see I've got IntelliSense here of that object. It's not a JavaScript object at this point. It is actually a C# object. So Blazor is going to take the data that bubbles up from JavaScript and pass that over to .NET, and we get a nice strongly typed object in here with all of the touch info. This is set up for, this event handler is set up for multi-touch. So if you look, you have touches, and that is a collection of all the touch points. So you could have multiple fingers touching the screen if you want to do like pinch and zoom or something like that. So this is going to be an array of touch points. So if we were just doing a simple swipe gesture, like you want to take your thumb and swipe to the right, swipe to the left to do some sort of interaction, we would want to take maybe the first item from that list because we're only worried about that one touch point. Once we have that one touch point, we get the client X, the client Y. We've got page XY, screen XY. So there's all these coordinates that we can use. And we can do a lot with these coordinates. So let's take a look. If we take the message down here, and we'll go ahead and plug in some of these bits of data. So let's create a simple variable here. And we'll call this ref. We can't call it, that's a restricted keyword, I think. We'll call it reference for now. And this is a touch point that we're going to grab from the event args. And in the message, we will go ahead and use some string interpolation here. And if you're a JavaScript developer or .NET developer, this shouldn't look too foreign. We can say reference dot client X, and then we'll go ahead and drop the same code over here. We'll say X by Y, and we'll get the coordinates and put those in our message. Let's go ahead and put a little text in here too. There we go. So we'll go ahead and rebuild that. I think we got a successful build. There we go. Get that rebuilt. We'll go back to the browser, refresh our page. And let me pull comments up again, make sure we don't have any questions here. Welcome, Timebender, Ancient Coder, folks. Welcome to the chat. Click here to begin. I need to change that to touch to begin, but now if I touch, you can see I'm getting the coordinates of where this was touched. So now we're getting somewhere. We don't have a swipe gesture yet, but at least we have touch. We do have also some cancellation, it looks like, taking place here. The button isn't being clicked. That is in this touch area as well. So that's something to be aware of. Timebender, I am using Rider today. So I'm testing out Rider this year as part of my tooling to see how well it works. And so far, I'm happy with it. It's pretty nice. This is actually, I think, one of the default themes as well. I like it. Just right out of the box, it looks nice. One of the setup features that I thought was really cool is you can just one click and it will give you the same keyboard shortcuts as Visual Studio. So that made it a lot easier to get used to. Is it open source? Unfortunately, no, it's not open source that I know of. It is a commercial product. So as a Microsoft MVP, I was fortunate enough to get it for free. I don't know the pricing and all those details because I just didn't have to deal with that part of it myself. But learning about it and so far liking it. So we have our touch point, and again, it was worth noting that that touch did override this button. So we probably need to take the button out of this area here, or move the touch point at some point. So just be aware of that. So we have our on-touch event. We can get the XY from it. With that XY comes some pretty powerful things that we can do. So there are some other touch events that we can hook into. Let's go ahead and move this to another line so we can take a better look on this small zoomed in screen. We can also add an on-touch end. And we could set up a touch end event handler as well. So let's try that one. So we'll change touch start to touch end. And we'll copy the same code over here. So we'll do this. And just to make sure we know which one we have, we'll say touch end and touch start. And let's see what happens when we run this one. So now we've got two event handlers. Make sure we put these up here. Touch start, touch end. We'll rebuild. And we'll see if we can capture that same point of reference. And I'm going to click and hold, and it says touch start. Or no, it didn't refresh. It should say touch start. There we go. Touch start gives me the coordinates. I'm going to move, let go, and I get an on-handled exception. So the event argument is slightly different here. That touch point is not going to be touches. The array that we need to look at is actually going to be changed touches. So we're going to track that change. So we'll have the initial reference here and then the change here. And now if we rebuild and go back, we should be able to pick up both of those points. So that was a quick build. We'll refresh again. I'm going to click and hold. I've got my touch start. I'm going to move. I'm going to release. And I have my touch end. So now I have this tracking of these XY coordinates. So now that we have that, we can pretty much do anything we want. We can create a swipe gesture, so we can track that touch start and touch end from left to right, right to left, up and down, and just write a little bit of code here to decide how we want to handle that touch event. Pretty cool stuff so far. There is also an issue of possibly dragging and dropping this by accident. I don't see it happening here in the UI in Chrome, but when I did research this, I did see as a suggestion that you watch for this on move event as well. So there is an event that's triggering while this moves. And if you want to try to prevent some oddities where it may register this as a drag and drop, you can say touch move. And we can use some Blazor directives here to cancel that move event. So let's see, I'm trying to remember the syntax for it. Just looking at some notes. This is going to be prevent default. So it looked like this. I want on touch move. There we go. On touch move, prevent default is true. Make sure I've got this correct here. Let me see if I've got that right. It doesn't seem to be highlighting that syntax correctly. So on my touch events, I should have a move event. Target touch, touch change. These are all the events. Let's see here. Touch. These are all event args. I'm looking for all of them. Oh, here it is. Touch move. Yep, there it is. Touch move. Should be something I can cancel if I need to cancel that. So that's just something to be aware of. Again, with my experimenting of it, I didn't notice that it made any difference either way, but I didn't do a whole lot of testing. So this is something that was suggested in some JavaScript implementations that do the same thing. So we should be able to cancel it that way. Let's just make sure we get a build there. I'm not sure why the highlighting isn't working correctly, but it might just be something that wasn't recognized. All right. So we've got our touch event. We've canceled our touch move event. So this is equivalent to saying prevent default in JavaScript. And now we just need to write some code here to understand what the user's intent is. So we can track the beginning touch, the end touch. If we take those values and we actually track them and see what direction they're moving and do some math. I know that's everybody's favorite subject. Some people like math, I'm sure. We can actually interpret the two touch points. We can find the slope of the angle. We can find the velocity the person is swiping. So what we want to do is if somebody is simply like scrolling slowly, we don't want to trigger a swipe up event, right? If somebody is slowly moving their thumb across the screen for whatever reason, we don't want to trigger a swipe left or swipe right event. But if they quickly swipe left or quickly swipe right, then that would be a gesture that we want to handle. So we can do all of that just with those 2 points that are being collected. So let's look at how we can do that. So this was actually kind of fun, I thought. So we need to set up a couple of variables here. The first thing that we need is we need to track the initial reference point. So this, I would suggest encapsulating this in a component itself and not just doing it right here in the code block. I would take this card out and put it in a separate file and whatnot, but we're just doing a demo here, so we're not going to get too in the weeds on this. But I want to collect a touch point. So I'm going to call that a reference point, and I'm creating a tuple here. So it's kind of a cheap way of creating a class. These 2 values are going to be coupled together. So I'm going to get a reference point, and I want to capture the date and time. There is no just simple time object, so I need to get the whole full date time object here. And I want to capture the actual date and time that these events happen. So I'm going to grab the start time of when that touch starts happening, and I'm going to call this my start point. So this is a tuple or tuple of a touch point and a time, a start time. And this is going to be my starting point, and this is a field. So this field will have both of those values in it. And when I start touching that object, what I want to do is I want to say start point dot reference point equals, and then t target. So this is my event argument. I'm going to say target touches 0. So I'm going to grab that initial touch on that that div and get the coordinates and all of the touch point information and store that in a reference. So we've got that. I also want to take start point dot start time, and we'll go ahead and stash away date time now. So we'll get the start time, and we'll put that in a reference too. So what we're going to do with that timing information is a little bit of math. So we'll get into the math part here in just a second. It'll make sense, I promise. Bon, hello, welcome to the show. Welcome on YouTube. We're streaming across multiple channels today. So thank you everybody who's tuning in from Twitch and YouTube and Facebook. Welcome to Blazor State Has Changed. We're doing, or sorry, Blazor Power Hour. We're doing some event handling in Blazor. We're using touch events to track where the user's touching the interface and create a swipe gesture. So right now we have the handle touch start, and we have a reference point and a time they started touching the element. So the next thing we need is we need to figure out when this all ended. So when the user lets go of this item and they quit touching that point, we want to figure out some mathematical values here. So I'm going to call this end reference now, because we have a global field that is the start reference. So right now I have end reference, and this is the changed touch points. So now I have access to both of these. Let's go ahead and save this as well. We'll say var end time, and we will say date time now. And now we have the end time. So we have start time, end time, and all of the differences between these two elements. So I talked a little bit about math. Let's talk about math. If I have point A and B, and I also have the time it took to get from point A to B, then I could do velocity. So if I say var velocity, the mathematical equation for velocity is distance over time, right? So the distance is going to be point A to B, my touch targets and my change touches over the time. So we'll subtract the 2 times that we have, and then we'll have the velocity of that that swipe. With the velocity of that swipe, what we can determine is how fast that person's finger is moving across, and then we can kind of measure the intent to see if it was just a simple, dragging your finger across the screen slowly, or if I'm actually trying to interact and, flick that element left or right or up or down. So we need to get the distance. We haven't got the distance yet. So we have the 2 items. Let's go down below where they're defined. Let's get distance. So what the distance would be, we'd actually have 2 of these. The distance, we're going to have an x and a y. So it's going to be the difference between the 2. So we'll call this diff x, and we will have the start point, starting point dot reference point, and the x value minus the end point, and the x value. So that should do that there. So we have the x, and the y is just as simple as duplicating that line of code and changing the y's out for the y. So when I talked about velocity, we're actually going to have 2 of those, by the way. We're going to have a velocity x and a velocity y. We have our end time. We haven't done anything with the end time yet. We need to get a diff of time. So we'll do a variable again. We'll call this diff time. And what we want to do is take, I actually don't need this variable of end time. I can say date time now minus, so we'll take the time now minus the time it started. And that will give us a time span. So this is, if I hover over this value of diff time, you'll see I get a time span. So I have the amount of time it took to get from point A to point B just by doing that. One thing that's nice about .NET code is the date time object is pretty well thought out. So getting dates and times work out very easily. You don't need to get like moment.js or anything like that involved. The integrated date time in .NET is pretty good. Isn't stopwatch more accurate? That's something I would have to look into. I don't know if it needs to be that accurate, but it might be something worth investigating. I didn't do that much investigation on just the date time portion of this. And then can I make a video on mobile testing and app testing? I have some videos on app testing on, let me see if I can grab the link for that really quick. I did this for .NET Conf not that long ago. So let's see here, .NET Conf, session replays, and if we go to, let's see, I want to find on page. Let's see if I can scroll down and find it. I'm not seeing it in here. Nope, that is not it. I know it's in this list somewhere. I'll share the list. There is a video in here that I did for .NET Conf on testing applications with Blazor. Pretty sure this is the latest .NET Conf 2020 day 1. Yeah, it's in here somewhere. I apologize, I don't see it off the top of my head. There is tons of content in here, and testing is one of those videos. So .NET Conf is a place to look for that. Let's see here. We've got our time start, our time end, and the difference in that time, the difference in X and Y. So now we can do some velocity calculations. It sounds crazy, but it's really, really simple math. So what we need to do is set up a couple more variables here. We can get the velocity of X, and that is going to be, we don't really care which direction the velocity is going in, other than the fact that it's X and Y. So what I want to do is take the absolute value of it. So I'll say math.abs. So the absolute value of the difference of X divided by the time, difference in time, and we'll grab that in milliseconds. So we will have distance over time in milliseconds, and then we will take this code and change out the y's. So now we have the y. So let's change this now, and we will put a message out that says the velocity in X and the velocity of Y. So let's see, let's build this. And we should be able to refresh this. And if I swipe, you'll see that I have two different velocity numbers. This is the X. I did a swipe from left to right, and I got a velocity of 0.9. And look how small the velocity is on the other swipe. And that's because I did a direct swipe across from left to right. If I were to go up and down, you'll see I've got a much bigger number on the bottom on the Y side than I do on the X side. The reason is there's not as much distance being traveled. So if I'm going left and right and up and down, there's not a lot of distance to divide by that time. So you'll see that the small number is going to be on the short, or the smaller number will be on the shorter traveled path. So if I go diagonal, you'll notice that they are almost identical. So we've got a velocity of 1 on either side there. It doesn't matter which direction diagonally I go, those numbers are about the same. So that's something that we can use. There's a couple things that we can use to identify up, down, left, and right because of this velocity. If the two numbers are close together, like that, I did another diagonal touch. If the two numbers are very close, then that means that it was diagonal, and it's kind of hard to tell whether it was up or down. So we could set up our gesture to cancel out certain parts of the swipe, and we can adjust these numbers and come up with different thresholds to trigger events. So let's do some up, down, left, right really quick. So let's determine if this was up, down, left, or right. The first thing that I want to do here is say if the velocity, well, let's go with if the velocity of X is greater than some number. So just playing around with this for a few minutes, I found out that about 0.8 is enough to determine whether it was intentional or not. So we can try that. We can put if the velocity of x is 0.8 or greater, then the message will say, now we need to define if that was left or right on x. So remember, velocity it's an absolute value, so it doesn't have a negative or positive value to it, but we still have the difference of x here. So we can use that. So I'm going to say the difference of x, if it is less than 0, meaning it's negative, then that was a swipe right. Otherwise, it was a swipe left. And we could create event handlers and whatnot. We're just trying to write this out to the screen right now, just kind of to do a proof of concept. Let's go ahead and run that one. We need to remove this message handler, or this message set here, or it's just going to override everything. And then we can go back, and with this simple check here, we should be able to look and see if this was, we need to refresh, if it was right, and I'll go left. So I know it's hard to see that I'm clicking and dragging, but this is swipe left and right. So we can determine that there. Now we need to do up and down, and this is going to be very similar. So we can just come in here, copy this, change these to Y, and then this will be down. If it's negative, it's down. If it's positive, it was up. So we can recompile that. And now we're getting somewhere, so you could see. And again, this isn't going to be perfect. You're probably going to want to take this code and tweak as needed. But we have up, down, and left and right. So far, so good. Diagonal hasn't really been handled, so this can get a little tricky. We could either add, we could kind of sift out diagonal handlers here if we wanted to implement some kind of diagonal down right, down left, northeast, southwest type of behavior here. Or we can cancel these out because they're not really showing the user's intent. So if I'm going up to the left, was it an up or was it a left? There needs to be some sort of threshold here maybe to determine one or the other. And if it's neither, just cancel that whole thing out and look for a more intentional, fully vertical or fully horizontal. And remember, the numbers, if they're extremely close together in velocity, that means that it had to be diagonal. And if it is left or right or up or down, then one of those velocities is usually very small. So we could use those to decide if it is an angle instead of a direct up and down swipe. And we could also just calculate the angle outright. So we have that as well. To calculate that angle, I'll put it up here, but I probably won't use it. I think it's a little bit overkill for what we're trying to do, but it is something that can be done, and it's relatively easy to put it in the code base. So we need to do some more math. So what we'd have to get, we do have 2 points, and we do have coordinates. So if we look here, let's do a little visualization. If we did some slope calculations, there we go. This is what we're doing. We have the X, Y points where we touch start and touch end. And if we do a little math, we can figure out the angle of those. We can figure out the slope. We can basically redraw this line because we know the 2 points. So to do that, we would again need to find what's called the rise and the run. So for the run, this would be our x coordinate. We actually have this. This is our diff in x, but we want to get an absolute value of it. Otherwise, it's going to be really tricky to figure out negative and positive values. So we'll just say we'll grab the ABS of that, and we'll go ahead and get the Y as well. And this will be the run. Oops, rise and run. And then once we have the rise and run, we can grab the angle from this. And we can say var angle is equal to math dot. We're going to use the inverse tangent. This one, there's a couple different methods here. There's a few different maths for those listening abroad. I'll use the whole maths with an S. We don't use that here in the US for some reason, but hey, whatever. So we'll use some maths with an S, and we'll calculate. This takes two numbers, which would be our Y and X, or our rise and our run. So we'll take the run and the rise. And this should give us our angle. It is going to give us an angle in radians. So there's some more math that we need to do. We need to convert radians to an actual angle like a normal mathematical angle. So we need to multiply this. The multiplication is going to be, the formula here is 180 by pi. Okay, so this will give us an actual angle that we can look at. So let's do this here. Let's say I'm going to override all of these messages. You won't see these come up for a moment. We'll say message equals angle, just so we can show that we are capturing the angle. Even though we won't use it, it's still interesting to see that we can get this. Just from those 2 points, we can go back to, which browser is it? There we go. Refresh this, and instead of up, down, left, right, we'll just see the angle that we're dragging here. So this is an 87-degree angle. That's about, I'm trying to get like a 45-degree angle, but you can see it's changing, and then all the way up would be close to 0. All the way down. So once we hit this, this 90 degrees here, we start going back to 45. So a straight line across either direction, doesn't matter, left to right, is going to be 90 degrees. 45 degrees in either direction, doesn't matter which direction, is going to be 45 degrees. So we could filter the angles on here as well. Up and down is going to be a 0 angle. Okay, so it's a 90-degree angle here, and then another 90 on the reverse, or the inverse of that triangle. So we could figure that out through just a couple math functions here. Again, I think these are somewhat overkill, unless you're specifically looking for one of those type of gestures. I don't think with this, you'd have to do some additional inspection to figure out if it was a upright or a downright angle, because we did ABS here. So we threw out some of the negatives. But you could always look back at the X and Y and figure out if those were negative, similar to the way we did left and right here. Let's see, what else can we do with this bit of information? I'm going to knock off these lines. We'll go ahead and quote these out. We're not going to use those right now. Again, another thing I could use is the velocity number to kind of help determine this gesture. So I could say if the velocity of x is less than some number. Now, we need to kind of refactor this out a little bit. So let's just throw a threshold number out there, just so we can put it all in one place. Or let's call this swipe threshold. And this is just going to be a value that we set this is something we determine ourselves. I'm going to use 0.8. Again, you could increase or decrease this number depending on how you want this gesture to be handled. And we'll go ahead and replace these numbers here. So if it is beyond that threshold, then we will do things with it. Let's see here. Let me double check chat room again. Make sure there's no questions. Nobody's got questions so far. So far, so good. Let's see. So we need to do some filtering. We're going to say if the velocity is less than our threshold and the velocity is the y is less than the threshold, then we'll go ahead and just cancel this out. So we haven't done that yet. We've only determined if there's any velocity at all, then we will determine if it's left or right. We haven't outright canceled anything. So what would happen is, let's see, I might need to go back and review that, make sure that's completely necessary, but we're going to go ahead and filter some stuff out, and then we could also come in and subtract these values from each other. Again, we don't care which direction they're going in, or which one is greater than the other. But if the two velocity values are very similar, so if we subtract those two values, we'll get the difference between them. We could say if that difference is no more than, or if it is less than 0.5, we'll reject that as well. So we could do some rejection in here and just say if the velocity isn't fast enough on either the x or y, don't do anything. And if the velocity isn't great, the difference between x and y isn't that great, that means it was angular. So that means it was the x and the y were very close. That means it's going at like a 45-degree angle. So we can go ahead and reject those inputs as well. So we don't get any false positives. So go ahead and oh, I forgot to build. Build that one out. And now, if we refresh this, we should be able to right swipe, left swipe, angle swipe. It did seem to pick it up still, so we could adjust the velocity values and kind of filter those out a little bit better. It is kind of filtering some of them. It's something that you got to kind of get a sense of feel for. It's probably hard to see on the stream. But if I do a straight 45-degree angle, you don't see it triggering a right or an up right now. If I take that angle down just a little bit, you'll see the right or the up trigger. So there's the filtering happening in there. So it feels pretty good. Again, this is on a simulated mouse click type of scenario. So you might want to take this mobile and kind of test it out on your mobile device and see how it feels. And adjust some of the threshold values. But now we have swipe gestures. We have up, down, left, right swipe gestures that seem to work pretty good. So we haven't written any JavaScript. There's no additional code to wire these things up. It's all part of the built-in data binding that happens with the event attributes, the at touch on touch start, on touch end. We can prevent touch move, so we don't accidentally drag this card around. Another thing that I would possibly add to something like this is, while the gestures are nice, if I go back to this screen and let's blow this out to full desktop mode, and I click on this, notice I'm dragging this, so there is no touch event on this desktop. This is not a touch device. It's not registering any of those events. So if you were to implement something like this, what I would suggest, and I still haven't figured out this button as well, it was getting its event canceled. What I would suggest doing, we'll go ahead and move the button off of it just for now, is putting something in here, whatever your swipe right gesture would be. Let's say these are going to be like one of those apps where you're like a dating app, I guess, where a swipe to, I don't know those apps. So whether it's swiping left or swiping right means whatever. Don't shoot the messenger here. I'm going to say one is okay. The other is delete. Something like that. Confirm. Let's call it confirm. You might want to have some buttons here that are showing on a desktop and possibly on a mobile device as well, depending what your users are demographics are like, I guess. Let's always keep accessibility in mind, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you're swiping right to delete and left to confirm, or the other way around, you want to have some buttons to fail over to if there's no swipe gesture. If you're on a desktop, you could do a little media query in here. We'll just throw it in line. How about that? Let's see. I think we could do it this way. Div. I can never remember media queries off the top of my hand, or off the top of my head. Let's see if we could do one real quick. Media. Desktop. Grab a desktop media query and just throw that in. We should be able to do only screen. Let's see if we can. We'll throw it right on the tag. This is not best practice. It's just getting it done. Let's see if that works. So we should be able to just do that, just for an example. I would put that in CSS, not directly in line. Let's try zooming this back down. You might want to do some, actually, I think you can write a media query to see if the touch events are or touch is enabled. That would be an even better one. I didn't do the media query thing right. Let's do it in a... That media attribute does work on some things. Let's do it in a class. Let's do style. Let's see if we can... Yeah, it doesn't like that either. We'll just throw it in CSS real quick. We'll throw it in a CSS class just to show what could be done. Then I'll copy that media query back over. And we'll only show this guy on our desktop, even though that's not the only limiting factor here. Again, I think there is a media query to detect touch devices. So we would do display block. Visibility is visible, and then the default of this is we would hide this. So the point being, provide an alternative if you're not able to swipe. Display none, and then visible hidden. So that should toggle it. Let's see if my CSS code works here. And then we'll do a little quick research to see if the media query for touch is available. Oh, the buttons are still there. So I didn't do that quite right. Or that media query is incorrect. Oh, this is, or smaller. That's why it didn't work. Had that backwards. Let's see. This should be, these are reversed. This isn't how I'd normally write these media queries. Let's do min width. So if we did min width, that should reverse that. There we go. They disappeared. So those disappear on the mobile where we have these swipe gestures, and then on desktop, you can see they reappear once the screen gets bigger. Let's see if we've got media query for touch. Let's see if we have a touch. To detect a touch device with only CSS. Let's see if there is media hover. Looks like there's some media queries out there that do detect touch. So there's some media queries that you can use there. They look like they are not quite standard though. So that's something to look into as well. If you're providing some sort of alternative interaction to the gesture, so make sure that you at least have something available if there's no touch that you can turn on to allow that person to confirm or delete. I mean, if anything, at least hide them behind like one of those little kebab icons or a little hamburger menu, so you can access the interactions without the gesture if people don't know they're there or are unable to use them for whatever reason. Alrighty. Let's see if there were any final questions here in chat. Screech Rat, welcome. Ancient Coder, do not know about swiping. Been married for 23 years now. I know nothing about dating apps, my friend. Screech Rat, thank you for joining us. I know if you just were coming in to the show, we built a swipe gesture. Let's take one last look at what we've got before we go. And we'll refresh this and then inspect this again with our mobile device with our touch icon here. So if we swipe left, right, up, down, we have that swipe gesture available in Blazor now by listening to the on touch and on end touch events that are built in to Blazor. So we've got on touch start, on touch end. We did some math. We figured out the velocity of the touch, so you can set a threshold on your gestures to make them so there's no false positives and things like that. So you're not like scrolling through your screen and accidentally triggering these gestures by accident. That could be extremely annoying. So you can improve on these equations and threshold values and whatever is filtering these gestures in your app. The source code is up on my GitHub page for the show. So you can find that up here at GitHub. It was put in by by a user that wanted to know if this was possible, and I went ahead and answered right in the issue. So drop the link in to chat there, and I will add another link to this to the homepage of that GitHub repo as well. Currently, it's sitting in an open issue, and I'll close that issue after the show today and move the link to the front page. So I hope you all enjoyed the show. We have TJ and Alyssa coming up later today on Code It Live. So TJ has a show about React. So if we go to our Twitch page here on Code It Live, you can see a full schedule. Next week we've got some special shows about SignalR coming up. A lot of it's going to be live coding, so there may be some fails and some learning moments. We don't have the code base pre-programmed or anything, but we're going to do some SignalR all week next week. So we've got a full week starting at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday the 12th through Friday. We're going to be live coding for about 4 hours a day with a guest for a 5th hour kicking us off. We've got some folks from Microsoft and throughout the community talking about SignalR, various aspects of it, apps they've used it in, how to get started, that type of thing. And then we're going to build a game of Crazy Eights over the next couple days, something that you could possibly take and play with the code base and share with friends and do some virtual card games, because a lot of us are still on lockdowns and whatnot. So it'll be an interesting app that we can share on GitHub and people can modify and play with. So we're going to build a Crazy Eights game over 4 days. We'll see how far we get with the code base. Again, we're going in it with very little prep, just so you can see the real process of writing code and failing and recovering and all that good stuff. I think that's the best type of content on Twitch, in my opinion. So again, we got React at 12:45 Eastern Standard Time today, so it's about an hour and a half from now. TJ is up with React Wednesday, and then shortly after him, Alyssa with UI Wednesdays. She may be doing a little UI work for next week, just so we have something that looks pretty as we code the backend stuff and the Blazor stuff. Then we've got the dev show tomorrow at 10, and live chat show Friday, and then I have my Blazor State Has Changed show on Friday, where I probably will be revisiting my Blazor size refactoring that was in progress before the end of the year. So make sure you check that stuff out. I will see you all Friday, and you have a great week, and stop in next week for some SignalR action. We'll be using Blazor with that, by the way. So if you're a big fan of Blazor, make sure you tune in, see what we're up to. Thanks, Ancient Coder. Appreciate it. And we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.